Hello and welcome to episode 240 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is August 5th, 2024. Today I'm wearing a fairly old shawl and I think this was the first project that I knit with opal sock yarn with cotton in it. So this is part cotton, part wool and part nylon. And I loved the color when I saw it, of course. And that was shortly after I had discovered Knitty.com. So Knitty.com, just in case there's somebody out there who hasn't heard of it yet, it's an online knitting magazine where all the patterns are for free. And they're basically mostly knitting. I think in the last couple of years, they've added a few crochet patterns, but on the whole, it's just knitting. It's knitty.com. And once I discovered that site, I loved checking out the projects, and I've knit quite a few knitty.com projects since then. But this was one of the first, and the pattern is called Genie. And the interesting thing about this pattern is that if you have a look at the braids on this side, and then you look on this side, they look exactly the same. And back then, this was the first time that I had knit reversible cables, and I was very intrigued, how do they do that? And then it turned out that you knit the cables with ribbing. So it's always a knit one per one, but the pearls just hide so you don't really see them. But the pearls on one side are the knits on the other side, and that's why you have the cables on both sides. But at the same time, you have all those drop stitches. And I don't think I had worked a lot with drop stitches before that. And here you have lots and lots of them. All the drop stitches in the middle are dropped as soon as you get to this point, and then you have a new stitch here, and then you drop it here. But then there are a few drop stitches that you drop at the very end. So those long lines, those stitches are dropped at the very end of the shawl. I dropped them partway through just to check out how wide this shawl was going to be. While knitting it, it looked more like a scarf because it was a lot smaller without the stitches being dropped. But once you drop the stitches, it sort of widens. And to determine how long I wanted the shawl to be, I needed to know the width. So at some point, I dropped all the stitches that needed to be dropped. I think I washed and blocked it to make sure. And then I just did yarn overs for the drop stitches so that I had a stitch at the same place again, and then I dropped that one at the end. So it's and because of the drop stitches, you not only knit one per one, but you do knit one through the back loop, then a normal purl, a normal knit, and then you purl one through the back loop to make sure that with the slip stitches, the drop stitches, your stitches sort of don't sort of get deformed or whatever, or they can't undo themselves, but they can sort of get wider. And to make sure that doesn't happen, you twist the stitches. This was a lot of work, and partway through, I felt like I was never going to finish it, but then I had a trip to Japan and I spent a lot of time in the plane, and I took this as my only knitting. And then while I was there, I knit on this during the train rides and whenever I had time. And that got me along a lot further. And I think that trip was in 2009. So that's how old this shawl is. And after I came home from that trip, I think that's when I dropped the stitches and I figured out how much more I wanted to knit. And then I finally finished it. You have those cables. It's not braids, it's cables, right? Yeah. So those cables are knit at the same time as the shawl. But then instead of casting off stitches, there's another cable up here. And you started the whole thing with a provisional cast on, and then you put these stitches back on the needle, and you have another cable at this end. So there's like a long cable running around the whole shawl. So this was a very interesting knit. I love the shawl, I love the colors, but I do love the fact that you have the cables on both sides, and it's something that impresses everybody who knits And people who can't knit are not impressed at all because they think it's just the way the pattern works. So you can tell by the level of being impressed whether people know how to knit or not. So that's the shawl for today, and the cardigan I'm wearing, that was in a German knitting magazine called Filati. Years ago, I do have a project page for this cardigan, and it does link to the pattern, but I don't think you can buy it online. But one of my customers, she wrote to the magazine and she could buy the pattern from them. I'm not quite sure whether it's even, maybe it's possible through Ravelry. I don't know. Maybe you have to write to them to get it, but you can still get the single pattern for this cardigan. So with this cardigan, I used the yarn that was called for, and I'm a bit distracted at the moment because I just realized that I forgot to prepare one project, and I'm just wondering where that is and whether I can, oh yeah, it's here. I just have to take it out of the bag. And when I get to the project, you will know why I remember it right now. But anyway, so this is the cardigan. I call the project Jacke Secondo because the yarn is called Secondo, and it's a mix of cotton, silk, and nylon. And it's the yarn itself is like a round piece of thread, so it looks different than other yarn, and it wears really nicely for summer. You start the cardigan at the back, you knit up, then you cast on stitches for the sleeves, you go up to the neck, you cast off some stitches, and then you finish one front and then the other, and then you have two seams at the side. So very simple construction. I did it a bit smaller than the smallest size in the pattern, so I should have cast on one more pattern for the front and back, and then only one pattern for the sleeve, but I decided to do two patterns for the sleeve, and I'm really happy with this cardigan. I love wearing it. I don't really wear it very often because it's so white and it's so delicate, and I'm always worried something might happen to it, so I very rarely wear it, but whenever I do, I'm really happy, and especially for summer evenings when it's just a little cold, or when I'm in a country where they have lots of air conditioning, I might put it on when I go inside a place. And yeah, and I love the feel and the wear and the look of it very much. And yeah, and I've talked a lot about reknitting the pattern, and that's what's coming up soon. Let me just put it in my notes so I don't forget. Okay, now, finish object. I have one finished object, and probably no big surprise that I finished my spiral granny square top. So this is crocheted out of Catania Color by Schachenmeier. It's just two simple spiral granny squares. I crocheted them together in the last round of the second square. I left a bit of a slit down here. I left a hole for the arm. I left a hole for my hat to go through. Same thing on this side. And I finished both squares down here. So this is there's just one double crochet here and one on this edge, because you can't have a proper end to the square if you do spirals, because you can't finish around. But I'm really happy with the way this looks now, and next week this is what I'm going to wear. Oh, by the way, I used 3 50-gram balls each for the front and the back, and I needed a little more than the 3 balls for one of the parts. And I think I've been talking about how the original colorway that I had was a lot softer than the new dye lot, and unfortunately it's still the same after I washed it. So this part is still a bit harder. It's not too bad when I'm wearing it. It doesn't bother me, but I'll be checking the yarn that I get from now on to see whether it stays this rigid or whether this was the exception. We'll see about that. So next week I'm going to wear this, and yeah, and you'll see what it looks like on me. And by the way, looking at my arm right now, I realized I wanted to quickly say something about this bracelet. This was crocheted by one of my students who was about 10 years old at the time, 9 or 10. And she gave it to me. She picked the colors of the yarn, especially for me, because she knew I liked these colors. And this is just crochet chain. So as soon as you can crochet a chain, or somebody, maybe you teach crochet, you can have them crochet a chain or several chains, and then you just fold them to the length you need, and you need to buy this clasp or whatever you call this. And then these strings are just glued into these two ends, and this is how you open and close the bracelet. And it's a very simple thing to do, but I like it a lot. You can choose any color, you can use one or many colors, and it's so simple to make, and still it's very effective, and I love wearing it. So just wanted to give you that little idea. Yeah, so that's my only finished object for today. Then on to works in progress, and I'll start as usual with the socks, and I continue knitting on the Two World socks for my sister. This was a Sock Madness bonus pattern this year. This is the first sock with the fish's head on the foot and some trees that reflect in the water on the cuff, and I finished the second cuff. I wasn't 100% sure that this was the right length, so I stopped knitting because I had this sock here in the shop, so I couldn't compare them. But now I've looked at them, it seems perfect, and now I can start on the heel flap for the second sock. Then I had many new socks last week, and I knit on all of them. The first one is the Color Opportunity Mystery Sockalong by Stephen West. I think last week I knit clue 1, which was the cuff of the sock, and then with clue 2 I should have knit some ribbing, but my sister didn't want it to be any longer than it already was, so I just finished it by knitting on an I-cord. And then the next clue, the same clue that had the ribbing here had the heel flap, that was the clue 2. And with the heel flap you could choose between a 2-color brioche or a garter stitch heel flap. I chose to do the 2-color brioche, so I had this contrast color on the inside and the main color on the outside, and then you knit this little heel turn, and that was clue 2. And then clue 3 was only to knit the top of the foot, so that was quite a surprise. So we picked up stitches for the other half of the cuff, and then we did these funny short row triangles with the color pops in between those triangles with the short rows, and that was clue 3. And then clue 4 has already come out, and that's to knit the rest of the sock. So basically I pick up stitches here, and then I knit the sole, attach it to the top of the foot, and then you knit the toe. I forgot to say beware, I'm showing something, but because all the clues are out, I don't know if it's still a mystery. But anyway, it's too late. Sorry about it. Sorry if I spoiled any surprises for you. But this is the first sock. I didn't get around to doing clue 4, finishing the sock, but that's the next step that I will be doing, and then I can start the second sock. So that was sock number 2. Then the next sock were the simple socks, the normal socks, vanilla socks I think is the English term for socks without a pattern, that I'm knitting out of one of the new old colors in the Rainforest series. And I actually finished the first sock. So this is what this color way looks like when you knit it up. So this is the picture of their sock, and this is how my sock came out. Very simple, straightforward, and I also started the second one. So, oops, caught on the other yarn. This is the second sock. You can see some of my progress keepers or stitch markers to show off every 20 rounds. Finished the heel, and now I can go ahead and knit the foot. And I haven't even checked whether the stripes come out differently. Yeah, there's a slight difference in where the dark and the light stripes are. The heel looks a little bit different. Yeah, very happy with that. Pretty sure my nephew's going to like the socks. And then the third new pair from last week are the Bellflower Socks, another colorway in this year's Rainforest anniversary collection. And I'm knitting the Bellflower Socks, which is another Sock Madness bonus pattern from this year. And this is how far I got with these socks. So this is the flower lace pattern, and it's not only a lace pattern, but it's a mix of lace and cables. And I think the lace tends to open up, but the cable tends to pull in. And I think with the amount of cables and lace in these socks, it evens out. So this is a fairly standard number of stitches that I'm using here. And I quite like the way the pattern comes out. I've almost reached the point where I want to start the heel increases. That's, I think, the most difficult part with toe-up socks, if you have a pattern with gusset increases, to find the perfect spot to start the increases. So I've measured and calculated and checked with my sock blocker, and I think I'm just about to start with the increases. And my friend who I'm knitting these socks for, she's on holiday at the moment, but I'm thinking maybe I can finish the increases and the heel, and then I'll stop there, and when she returns she can try them on, and if they fit I can knit the leg of the sock, and if they don't fit I might rip it back and start the increases at some other point. We'll see. I do hope they will fit. So that's it for socks for today, but there's one more project out of sock yarn, small project out of sock yarn, and that's the pattern battle, the current pattern battle, where we're using this Opal Abo yarn, the subscription yarn. So this colorway was chosen. It's quite similar to the shawl I'm wearing, and this is the Slippery Cowl by Tally Bean Knits out of her book Knit Happy with Self-Striping Yarn. And I started with this middle part that you knit from top to bottom, and then you cast off stitches and you pick up stitches on one side. And this is how far I've knit this side. And as you can see, this line is continued by knitting decreases, and I have to decrease down to a certain number of stitches, at which point I will try it on and see if it's sort of loose enough to go around my neck. It's probably almost long enough now, but I don't want it too tight, so I'll knit to the specified number of stitches, and then I'll see. And if I want, I can just go on knitting and make it a bit longer, and it'll be a bit narrower, but that's okay, I think. And then once I finish that part, I'll put the stitches on hold, and I'll repeat the same on the other side, and then at some point I'll be finished. But the next subscription parcel will come in September, so I still have enough time to finish this as part of the knit along, the pattern battle knit along. Yeah, so that brings me to the garments I'm knitting, and the oldest of those is, I think, the Lanatus pullover, and this is this beautiful colorwork, all over colorwork pullover, and I finished the first sleeve. And as planned, I knit this last colorwork pattern, and it's the same pattern that I had at the beginning of the colorwork, and it's here in the middle. So this is the only pattern that I've knit 3 times. Every other pattern is repeated once, so I've knit them twice. And I knit a fairly long ribbing, not very long, so the sleeve might turn out to be a little short, but I was thinking if I block the sleeve just a tiny little bit after washing it for the first time, it might be perfect. We'll see. Now I have to pick up the stitches for the second sleeve and just knit the second sleeve. So yeah, there's still quite a bit of work to do, but I still love it. I still enjoy the colors. I still enjoy the patterns, and it's a very interesting knit. And the second garment is my dress. That's a pattern by Nicola. It's called Mamaki. And I continued knitting on that. And that's the one where you can't really tell the progress that I've made because it all looks the same. It's just a bit longer, and I still haven't knit the same length as the sleeves, but I'm almost down to the ribbing of the sleeve. So I think this is one way of seeing that this dress is growing in length, and it's also getting a little bit wider, not very much. So I'm trying to, I'm doing fewer increases than the pattern calls for to make sure that my yarn lasts longer, because I want this to be a dress. If I had done all the increases that the pattern calls for, it would probably just have been a white pullover or maybe like a tunic. And I'm still hoping to have some sort of dress out of the 500 grams that I bought back then in Hamburg in the wool factory. So that is that. And then another pattern by Nicolor called Vinahop. And I'm knitting that out of Sports Weight Alpaka by Hansa Farm in this beautiful color that they gave to me. And again, it's you can see I like these colors, so I should be able to wear this shawl with this pullover, I think. But I continue knitting there, and my plan for this pullover is to have one stripe of stockinette and then one stripe of a knit purl pattern. What's the name for those kind of patterns? Can't think of it right now. Then there's another stripe of stockinette, and then this is the next pattern that I chose out of Bernd Kessler's book of knit purl patterns. Then there's another stripe of stockinette and another stripe of some sort of pattern. You can't really tell the patterns apart very clearly, but that wasn't the plan. It was just to make sure they look a little different. And I think I finished that stripe, and have I done the increase? I'm not quite sure. I think I've done the next increase round, and I'm now into the stockinette bit again. And to show you what the pullover looks like, I've put in a long cable and I've tried it on. I think I've taken a picture. I'm not quite sure whether I've uploaded it to Ravelry yet, but this is what the pullover looks like at the moment. So let me pull on this cable a bit. So I started with this back bit that's only knit in the back, and after I did the first 3 stripes, I cast on stitches for the front, and now I'm knitting in the round. So the back is a lot higher than the front, which is something I really like, especially in a warm pullover. And then this is what the round yoke looks like at the moment. And I love it. I really, really like it. It's going to be a fairly light pullover, but because of the alpaca yarn, it's still going to be fairly warm. But because it's a pure alpaca, I think I won't sweat in it. So even if it gets a bit warmer, it should be nice to wear. And I'm really looking forward to continue knitting on this. Yep, so that's that pullover. And then the next garment that I'm knitting, oh, by the way, I'm not showing the skirt again, even though 3 weeks passed since the last proper episode. I just didn't pick it up. I will do it at some point, I promise. But I had to cast on a new project, and as I said, I've been wanting to cast on a new version of this cardigan for a long time. And after thinking about it a lot, I decided to knit a black version. I used to have a summer cardigan, a short black summer cardigan that I designed and knit many years ago, but it was ever so slightly too short for my liking, and my sister always loved it. So at some point I gave it to her, but I've been missing a black summer cardigan ever since, and now I am knitting one. And I decided to knit the same cardigan that I'm wearing at the moment, but out of the Catania, because this is a yarn that I sell in my shop, and it has the same yardage as the Secondo, but it's a pure cotton, and the yarn is constructed differently than this yarn. So I wasn't quite sure whether it would work out. But instead of doing a gauge swatch, I decided to just go ahead and start knitting the back. And I also didn't check on how many stitches I had used for this cardigan. So I just went with the smallest size in the pattern, and then felt like this was a lot of stitches, and I was supposed to increase the number of stitches after the ribbing. So that's what I checked with my actual cardigan. I realized I had used less stitches than in the pattern. So instead of ripping back, which I'm just too lazy to do, I decreased the number of stitches after the ribbing to the number of stitches that I had with this cardigan. And this is what this looks like at the moment. So I have ribbing with many, many stitches, and then I decreased about 20 stitches after the ribbing. And now I'm knitting the same lace pattern that I have here. I'm knitting the same number of pattern repeats as in my white cardigan. And so far I've noticed that this comes out a little bigger than the white cardigan. I'm using the same needle size, but because it's a different yarn, it does come out a bit bigger, which for me is fine. If the front and back are ever so slightly wider, it's okay for me. And I don't mind the ribbing having more stitches. I'm now going to see, I probably won't knit the same number of rows that I had with this cardigan. So with this cardigan, I knit 2 pattern repeats before I cast on the stitches for the sleeve. And then I knit 2 pattern repeats to the shoulder. Then I cast off the neck stitches and then knit the fronts. And with this, right now I'm thinking of doing 2 pattern repeats before I cast on the sleeve stitches, but I may cast on fewer sleeve stitches. Maybe I'll just do 1 pattern repeat, or maybe I'll do 1.5. The pattern is written in a way that you can do half repeats, I think. And then the same with the rows. Instead of doing 2 full pattern repeats in the height, I may just do 1.5. I don't know. These are the ideas that I have at the moment. This is how far I've gotten so far. And once I've knit 1 full pattern repeat, or maybe 1.5, or maybe even 2, I can keep comparing to this cardigan, and then I can make decisions on how to continue with this cardigan. But on the whole, I'm really happy. It's as I said, it's a cotton yarn. I really like this pattern. It's less obvious with the black yarn than the white yarn, but I think if I wear a light top underneath this, it'll show nicely. If I wear a black top, it'll be very simple and less obvious. Really looking forward to knitting this cardigan. So that's the one new project I have this week. Then on to my shawls in progress, and I am knitting 2 mystery shawls. The first one is the Abloom Mystery Knit Along by Susanna IC, and this is so old now that I'm sure it's not a mystery anymore, and I'm still on clue 1. I really, really want it to be done with clue 1 by today, and I can say that I've started the last repeat of this lace chart. I had to do 8 repeats, so I finished 7 of them. I'm now on number 8, and this is what the shawl looks like at the moment. It's very light, it's so soft, very small beads that are sort of all over the place. Still enjoy knitting this. I enjoy the color, the feeling of it, and I just love the tiny beads, even if they're not very obvious. There'll be more beads in the other clues. I've looked at clue 2. I still haven't looked at clue 3 and 4. I still haven't looked at any finished object project photo, so I still don't know what this shawl is going to look like in the end, but I'm really tired of clue 1 and I want to get this finished, and so this is my goal for this week, is to finish clue 1. Maybe start clue 2, but if I just finish clue 1, I'll be happy. The other mystery knit along is still running, so in case you don't want to see it, I'll be showing it in a moment. And that's the Goff's Place Mystery Knit Along by Kate Davies. And this is one that's running for a long time because we have a full month for every clue. And every clue is fairly big. I'm showing it now. So this was clue 1. This was a fairly big square that we knit with 5 colors. And then we picked up, or we continued knitting half the number of stitches for clue 2. And this is where I was last time I showed it to you. And it took me a very long car ride to finally finish the middle of this clue. And then we continued knitting on this side of the clue, so on the opposite side of clue 1, I continued, I started knitting clue 3, and this is what this looked like. And this is color, it's not color number 1, but it's the first color that I knit in this clue. This is the second one. And I just started with color number 3. And this, I think, gives you an idea of how the short rows work. And once I finish this color, I'll add color 4 and 5. And then this clue is done. And the next clue, I think, comes out tomorrow. So I really, really have to hurry up with this clue, which again takes quite a bit of time because it's many stitches. And yeah, but because of the short rows, the rows get shorter and shorter, and then the end of each of the stripes is a bit quicker than the beginning, which is nice. And I hope to get it done as quickly as possible. But I think as soon as clue 4 comes out, I will have a look at it because I'm so curious to see how she's going to finish this off, how to pull everything together. Very, very excited. So I'm not showing anything anymore in case you were looking away. And I just realized I was mistaken when I said there is only one new project. I actually have 2 new projects. Oops. Anyway, but before I come to that, I am showing you a very old project. So this has been on my list of projects the whole time, but I haven't shown it to you in a long time. This is my all projects memory blanket. So the pattern is the Coziest Memories blanket, and I've knit one like this before without the black stripes, and it's on my sofa here in the shop. But I started this blanket thinking that I would knit 1 square for every project that I finish out of fingering weight yarn. So this is not only opal yarn, but any fingering weight yarn that I was using to knit a project, I would knit 1 square in here. So this was not intended to go through all the leftovers, but it's 1 square per project. And the only time a color will repeat in this blanket is when I knit another project out of the same yarn. And you can see there's some hand-dyed yarn here, and also those 3 are hand-dyed yarns. Most of it, of course, is opal yarn because that's what I use for knitting most of the time. This is Lana Grossa yarn, and let me see. Those 2 are sock yarns with cashmere in it from a different company that I got as a present. And there's at least 1 square with alpaca yarn, it's sock yarn in here. Can I find it? Yeah, this one. This one is alpaca sock yarn by Hansa Farm. I knit this together with this Hundertwasser yarn with the 2-color brioche hat. And I finally continued knitting on this blanket. So, oh, by the way, at first I always knit it as a square. So first 1 square, then I had 4 squares, then 9, then 16, and so on and so forth, until I reached the width of 10 squares. So that was 100 squares then. And then I decided this was the width I was going for, and now I only want the blanket to grow lengthwise. So now I'm 2 rows into the lengthening process. So this is 12 squares long now. And the last time I showed it to you, I must have knit those 2 squares. And now I've added these 3 squares. They're all black dragon colorways from Opal. And I knit socks out of those yarns for my cousin's children. 2 of my cousins' 5 children. And then I also added these 3 squares. And this square I knit a baby cardigan, that's still here. And with those 2 colors, those were last year's rainforest colorways, and I knit the sock couple that I knit every year for a couple that I give socks to every Christmas. So these were his socks and her socks, and so I gave them away last year for Christmas, and I'm now knitting the leftover into my blanket. So I'm really behind on knitting all the leftover yarns into the blanket, and I really want to get a move on to try and catch up with the projects that I just finished, and then also finish the blanket at some point. So as I said, it's 10 squares wide and I'm thinking of making it 15 squares long. So as I said, this was row 11, 12, so this is 13, and then 2 more rows of 10 squares, and then I think it's big enough for a small blanket or a big shawl. Yeah, so that's the plan there. And that brings me to our knit along and crochet along that I'm running on this channel. And with the knit along, we are doing either haramaki or reversible hats. And I started another reversible hat with first this very bright, colorful opal abo subscription yarn. And I found out that the new series that comes out in December, that will have this colorway. So if you like it, if you want to buy it in December, it'll be available to buy. And then I continued the hat with this beauty colorway, which sort of has the same colors except for the white and with a bit bigger stripes. And the beauty yarn is a bit softer than all the other opal yarns. So this is going to be the soft inner side of my hat, and this is going to be the bright, funny outside of the hat. And if I want to turn it around at some point, I can do that. And I've almost finished the second half. So those two halves are almost the same length now. I've put in the markers. This was the halfway point when I started the new yarn. And this is 1/3 and the second third. And I think I have to knit like another 10 rounds. So I'm pretty sure I can finish it this week. My hat. And then I will sort of stop with this knit along because it has been running for a long time, and I've started the crochet along at some point, and for the spiral granny squares, and I did a tutorial video. If you want to know how to crochet spiral granny squares, I explain that to you. It's not difficult at all. And the top that I showed as a finished object at the beginning of the video was the first project in that crochet along, and because that was done, I picked up a new project, and it's a new project now, but I had already done the beginning of this project when I experimented on how to do a spiral square, and also when I did the video on how to do that, I'd already crocheted a 10 gram mini by Opal into a spiral square, and I've now decided to grow that into a big square that I can either use as a small blanket, or I can fold it over and use it as a triangular shawl, something like that. I have one of those crocheted out of alpaca lace yarn, which is very beautiful and very soft, and I love it, but it has a very dark edge, and it's more muted colors, and it's a very fine yarn. I have to be a bit careful with it, and I've sort of decided to have a colorful version of it in a more robust yarn that I can use like more in everyday circumstances. And when I first crocheted the middle, I was thinking of using all the Hundertwasser colorful yarns by Opal. But now when I picked it up, I decided to be a bit more sensible, and I have so much leftover yarn that I'm going to use them to finish this square. So this was the first leftover ball of yarn that I picked up, and I already did several rounds with this yarn. And these are the yarns that I chose so far. And with this square, I can actually finish off the whole ball of the yarns. So this looks like a rainforest colorway. No idea what I made with that. This is Hundertwasser colorway that I used for socks that I gave to my aunt. This is I'm pretty sure it's opal yarn, and I'm pretty sure that my sister knit a hat out of this. These were socks for my husband. Was it a rainforest? I'm pretty sure it was a rainforest color. And this is another Hundertwasser colorway that I'm not quite sure what I made with. But the funny thing is, it's the same colorway that I'm using at the moment. So I don't know why I have two leftover yarns in the same colorway, but it happens sometimes. But this was a fairly small bit of leftover, and this is at least a half skein, maybe even more than that. And so I want to use that once the square is a lot bigger and the stripes get smaller, and then I can repeat this. But there's so much going on in between, it won't be really obvious, I think. And this is already the second colorway for this square. So I think this should be a fun project. yeah, and that's finally everything that I knit and crochet during the last 3 weeks. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!